train screeched to a stop at the edge of Dustwater, a small town where the wind always carried whispers of the past. From the first carriage stepped a woman whose face bore the quiet sadness of too many broken promises. Her name was Clara Wren, 24, once full of dreams, now carrying only a small trunk and a letter that had kept her heart beating through a long and lonely journey. She had answered an ad in the Western Union Gazette, a mail-order bride notice written in careful penmanship by a man named Luke Carver, a rancher from the far plains of Texas. He had promised her honesty, hard work, and a home where she could belong. But Clara had learned the hard way that promises were often lies told in beautiful words. Her last engagement back east had ended in humiliation when her fiancé ran off with her dowry and left her with nothing but debts and shame. She'd sworn never to believe in love again. But when desperation met hope, she found herself writing back to Luke, if only to escape the cold world that had forgotten her. Luke Carver waited on the platform, tall and sunburned, his hat pulled low against the evening glare. His eyes were a steady blue that didn't wander or waver. He'd been expecting a woman desperate for shelter, but when he saw Clara, with her back straight and her chin raised despite the dust on her dress, something shifted inside him. She looked like someone who had fought too many battles alone and had no idea how beautiful her courage was. "Miss Wren?" he asked, removing his hat politely. Clara nodded, clutching the letter he'd written. "Mr. Carver," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You didn't have to come all the way to the station." He smiled faintly. "Ma'am, I didn't send for a bride to let her walk home alone." There was a silence between them, heavy with things neither knew how to say. She looked around at the wide, endless land, the cattle in the distance, the faded sky, and thought, this is the edge of the world. He thought, maybe this is where my life begins again. The ride back to his ranch was long and the sun dipped low behind the hills. Luke tried to make conversation about the land, the weather, the wild mustangs he'd been breaking, but Clara's answers were careful, like a woman afraid of saying too much. When they reached the ranch, she saw the modest house, hand-built, surrounded by oak trees and an old wooden fence. A horse neighed softly nearby, and for a moment something in her chest softened. Inside, Luke had prepared a simple meal, cornbread, beans, and coffee, but she noticed the small vase of wildflowers on the table. "Those are for you," he said, almost shyly. "They ain't much, but I figured it's nice to have something pretty in a house full of dirt and boots." Clara smiled faintly. The first time since she stepped off that train. "They're lovely," she whispered. Days turned to weeks, and Clara settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She cooked, tended the garden, and learned to milk the cows. Luke never rushed her, never demanded affection or gratitude. He worked hard beside her, repairing fences, hauling water, and fixing what the harsh land broke. Sometimes she caught him watching her, quietly, as if trying to understand. The walls around her heart. Once during a storm, the roof started leaking. Luke climbed up despite the lightning, and Clara shouted for him to come down. "You'll get yourself killed," she cried from below. He grinned and said, "If a man can't keep his roof from leaking over the woman he promised to care for, what good is he?" He slipped, fell halfway, but caught himself, muddy, soaked, laughing like the rain didn't scare him. Something in that moment broke through her silence. She began to laugh too, pure, unguarded laughter that made him stare in awe. That night, when the thunder rolled far away, Luke sat by the fire, whittling a piece of wood while Clara mended a torn sleeve. The light flickered between them, soft and golden. "Clara," he said slowly, "I know you didn't come here believing in love. I ain't here to promise you pretty lies. But I'll tell you this, I won't leave you wondering what's true." She looked up, her eyes searching his. "You talk like you've never been hurt." He smiled sadly. "Oh, I've been hurt plenty. I just learned that pain's the tax you pay for, something worth having." Her hand trembled as she set down the cloth. "Love was a lie where I came from. Luke, men said sweet things until the wind changed." He met her gaze, steady as the ground beneath them. "Then let me be the first truth you know." The fire crackled between them. She felt tears sting her eyes, not from sorrow but from something deeper, fear of believing again. Slowly, Luke reached across the table, not to take her hand but to place his palm open on the wood between them, a silent promise that he would wait. that he would stand there as long as it took for her to trust him. Clara looked at that calloused hand and saw everything she'd prayed for but never dared to want, a man who didn't just speak love but lived it. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and found him outside feeding the horses, humming softly. She watched him for a long time, the sunrise painting him in gold, and for the first time in years, Clara Wren believed that maybe love wasn't a lie after all. As the weeks passed, Dustwater whispered about the quiet rancher and his city bride, who now smiled when she walked through town. No one knew how two broken souls had found peace in each other, but they all saw it, the way she placed a hand on his arm when he spoke, the way he looked at her like she was the only truth in a world full of dust and noise. Love had found them where neither had thought to look. And somewhere in that endless Texas sky, their story became one more legend of how the West wasn't built just by guns and grit, but by hearts brave enough to believe again.